Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 96 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. In this episode, we are excited to bring on from Hornady, Seth Swerczek. So Seth is the marketing communications manager. He's been with Hornady since 2013, and we are really looking forward to have him come on the podcast. Looking forward to talk about the transition as Hornady went through what was the AMAX, to the ELD match, to the A-tip, all of these great things Hornady has done with great quality competition grade bullets, and then the forward-off program. So we've been using that at our shooting school for a while. Every year it just keeps getting better. This year, the best it's ever been. So we're really looking forward to having Seth on the podcast in a great interview for a great episode. So without further ado, here we go. All right, before we get started with the interview, I do want to say a quick thank you to MDT. MDT is a proud sponsor of the show, maker of world-class chassis, and a great place to upgrade your factory rifle. So if you're getting into the sport of long-range shooting, or if you really want a nice upgrade to your rifle that allows you to get full adjustability, adjustable length pull, cheek piece, all these great things, stop over to MDT TAC. That's MDTTAC.com. Also, we'd like to thank Krieger Barrels. Krieger is a maker of fine cut rifle barrels and have their new KriegerDirect.com up and running. So if you need a custom barrel and you need it soon, you can log on to KriegerDirect.com and they can have your barrel delivered in as little as 3 to 4 business days. So stop over to KriegerDirect.com. That's KriegerDirect.com today. All right, so all the SHOT Show is over, and we're looking forward and have planning to have Seth come on the podcast here to talk a little bit about Hornady, the bullets, and forward-off program. We use a lot of their stuff here. Back when I first started shooting long range, I used a lot of the AMAXs back through the late 90s and early 2000s. And in the early 2000s to late 2000s, I actually shot for Hornady and Leupold as well. So really, really enjoyed those guys helping me out as a shooter. So in full disclosure, we are a huge Hornady fan. They make fantastic bullets. We've been using them for decades. And just everything that they keep doing, you can tell the company is run by shooters that are really passionate about shooting and shooting at distance and creating a great product. So I've been really looking forward to this podcast, getting a chance to interview Seth and talk about all the different things Hornady has been doing. So without further ado, let's get Seth on the line and have a great interview with Seth Swerczek from Hornady Manufacturing. All right, so with us today is Seth Swerczek. He's from Hornady. He's been with them a long time. We're really excited to have him on the podcast. As you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Hornady, their bullets, and all the things that they offer and have done for us as a shooting community. So I'd like to welcome Seth to the podcast, and thanks for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. So, Seth, before we even get started in the interview, can you talk a little bit about your history, both prior to Hornady, because you did serve, as well as how long you've been with the company and what all you've done as far as your roles there?
Yeah, absolutely. So just hitting the wave tops. We'll go back. I'm a rather young guy in the industry, and I did do some time in uniform. I was in the Marine Corps. I was also in the Marine Corps Reserve, and I played football at a small college here in Nebraska. And I graduated from college with a degree in business in 2012, and I started at Hornady in March of 2013. So it was really a quick transition into the working world, and I started as a technical services representative. So that was customers would call in, and if they had a question about bullet selection, reloading, a technique, getting into a competitive sport of some kind, anything that was hunting, shooting, and Hornady could help with, they can call in and talk to one of our technical staff. So that really was my foray into getting into the company and learning our product. Going way back, I grew up hunting and shooting, And I grew up reloading. I started to reload when I was 12 or 13 is when my dad kind of showed me the ropes, and I hunted and shot and then got bit by the long range bug early, and did that all through high school. And so coming to work for Hornady was just kind of a natural fit. And then I think it was 2016, but might have been closer to 2017, our senior ballistics scientist, Dave Emery, he retired. And so the ballistics team was just short on manpower. And, there's not a ton of colleges where you can go get a degree in, small arms projectile design or internal ballistics or anything like that, or, propellant technology. So they hired internally, and I got hired into the ballistic engineering team, and there's a lot of tribal knowledge there and a lot of learning on the job. But that was the coolest job in the world, getting to work with the Doppler radar. The ballistics team really takes charge of the research and development on the new cartridges and new bullets. And, we also do production support for internal ballistic problems that come up, and we work with the powder manufacturers very closely. So, worked in ballistics for quite a while. And then almost exactly 1 calendar year ago, there was a marketing position that opened up that I was kind of a natural fit in. And so I made the transition from being almost exclusively on the technical side to now I am completely removed from the technical aspect. So now I'm the communications manager. So I work with the editorial folks, the people that write the gun writers. I work with some of the TV shows, the YouTube stuff, just the liaison between our company and our product and the people that get it out in front of people. And that's kind of the long and short of it.
So you're really with Hornady when they first started getting into like the AMAXs. I think they were in the 2008, 13s. I mean, when did the AMAXs start to come on the market?
So I'd have to go back and check, but it was long before I was employed in 2013. By 2013, that AMAX had been around for, I would bet at least a decade.
Oh, wow. So
maybe not quite that long. It was certainly, pre-2010.
Awesome. And then, so you got to watch the development going from the AMAX to the ELD to the ATIP, and then really early on getting involved in all the ballistic software stuff. So I guess to start off, I got a couple questions for you. One of the reasons I started shooting AMAXs way, probably, 20 years ago. So I grew up shooting tactical and sniper matches, and actually shot for Hornady and Leupold back in the early 2000s. And a lot of the matches back then shot 308s. That was pretty much accepted across the board, and then eventually turned into the 260. But I often got funny looks early in those matches because when I would pop my box of reloaded ammunition open, there would be ballistic tips or AMAXs. And people always assumed that they were like varmint bullets and such. But one of the reasons I adopted the AMAX early on was one of the bigger issues with the 308s is at really long range and small errors of yardage. So you get the yardage off a couple yards, or the standard deviation in the BC. So rather than shooting the burgers, which always had like different size hollow points at long range, I really felt that I didn't want to tip bullets like bench rest guys. And I know this is getting long-winded here, but I think it plays back into why these bullets are so important to us. At long range, the 308s, if you have any standard deviation in the BC from bullet to bullet, you're going to string pretty good because they don't start off blazing fast. And so I always thought people missed just as much, just over, just under the target as they did left and right, especially in the sniper-type matches that we shot years ago. And so when people would ask why I shot the AMAXs, I would try to explain to them that it was just trying to get that bullet as close to standard BC across the board from bullet to bullet as possible to keep that vertical stringing down. And maybe I was off a little bit or not, but that's really what got me started. And that and the fact that they were awesome varmint rounds, so we could take them out woodchuck hunting and all that stuff. So can you go into like the start of the AMAX and why it really was developed and what problems it was solving? I mean, that's sort of me throwing myself out there first, but what really got it going and why the effort to do that?
Sure. Well, and I think you've brushed on it already. And this, again, the development of the AMAX predates my time here, but the desire to go to a tipped bullet is a couple things. One, it's going to make your bullet longer without adding a ton of mass up front. And, high BC bullets are heavy bullets, but they're only heavy because they're long. Length is really what we want, and we can do things with the ogive and the boat tail length when we can make a long bullet. So you get to add some ogive length to the bullet by using something that's polymer. And then on the other side of that is they are made in molds, thousands and thousands of them at a time, at the same time. So they are 100% uniform when they come out of a mold. Every mold is the same. Every cavity in the mold is the same. So you get incredible consistency from a shape standpoint because every single thing is the exact same size. And then what we can do when we put that tip in the bullet is when we swedge that jacket to meet the tip, where we call that edge finish, we can make that edge finish so perfect where you can't even feel it. You can't take your fingernail and feel the difference between where the tip and the bullet jacket meet. And so we get a really smooth edge finish, and we get a very uniform and consistent tip shape. And like you had said, that really aids in consistency, where a hollow point bullet, it's difficult to swedge the jacket up into a point that is uniform every single time from bullet to bullet to bullet, from lot to lot to lot, and some people trim them, but that's just an extra step that you have to do. And then you have to find what BC works for you, because at the time, a lot of folks were still using ballistic coefficient. And it just solved a couple problems. It made a more uniform bullet. They were easier to manufacture, and they're going to be more consistent, not just across 100,000 bullets that you make and run. They're going to be consistent across 1 million bullets that you make in a year. They're really adds the inconsistency there. And like I said, ballistically helps you get a little bit longer profile without adding a ton of mass.
And the longer profile helps increase the BC. And did you find that it helped in this, like closing the gap from bullet to bullet on the BC, like really making them more consistent with each other?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. They are more consistent. The tipped bullet by nature is going to be more consistent because those tips, again, coming out of those molds are the exact same every single time.
So going forward to the ELD match, which the ELD bullets, what's the significant difference between the 8 to the ELD?
Well, the first huge difference is the use of the heat shield tip in the ELD match and the ELDX. Between an AMAX and an ELD match, the jacket thickness and tapering is very much the same. The manufacturing process is virtually identical. But when we updated from the AMAX to the ELD match, we did update some profiles to help increase the efficiency of the bullet. We wanted to get that drag coefficient as good as we possibly could and get that BC up a little higher over what was traditionally accepted with the AMAX. So we changed the profiles up a little bit, and then we added that heat shield tip, which was significant. There's the AMAX and the traditional polymer that was being used. It was good for what it was, and you don't know what you don't know until you drop 6 figures on a Doppler radar and you start to see some of the problems. And that's how we kind of discovered that, and that's why we made the change.
Was the heat shield technology, or was the issue with the heat across the board, or was it just like the really big magnums or the really fast cartridges?
So it's kind of a slide rule, if you will. So the way I like to explain this, if you imagine a slide rule that's 3 ways. So you've got the left and the right going up and down, and the bottom one going left and right. So you've got 3 knobs you can turn, or 3 levers you can move. And what it takes to get a tip to melt and it never quote unquote melts away, it just slightly deforms, is you have to have a bullet, one, launched at a high enough muzzle velocity in order for that to happen, which is usually about 2,500 feet per second, but it could be something else. It could be higher or lower, depending on the other 2 variables. The other 2 variables are that the bullet has enough ballistic efficiency that it holds on to velocity for a certain amount of time. And then the third mover on the slide rule is temperature, air temperature. So if you launched a bullet that had a low enough drag profile, that had a BC over about 0.5 or so, maybe 0.450 on a G1. If you launched it north of 2,500 feet per second and it was warm enough outside, those three things would allow that tip to experience enough heat over time that polymer would reach its, I'm going to say melting point, but that's an overstatement. Mm-hmm. It would just get malleable, and the resistance of the oncoming air would be enough to very slightly deform the shape of the polymer right at the tip there. And it never deforms the same way twice. So that created some inconsistencies, and we were able to document that with the Doppler radar and see it very clearly. And that's what precipitated the development of this different polymer that has a much higher melting point.
What was the distances that it started showing itself, and did it catch you guys off guard when you saw it? Like you're like, what is that?
Well, it was definitely a shocker. And so, the full picture is that we never actually set out to make a new match bullet with this heat shield tip at all. What we were doing at that time was trying to develop the ultimate all-range hunting bullet. So the ELDX, the hunting version, is actually what we were working on when we discovered that we were seeing these weird drag curves. And the range depended on the muzzle velocity, but it happened, somewhere around there. I believe it was about Mach 2. So not super far down range, within a first 200-300 yards is when we were seeing that. But then it would correct itself. Once that heat dissipated, because the bullet is losing velocity, then the tip would stop deforming, and then it would follow a normal shape drag curve. Mm-hmm. But the damage was already done because now you have bullets flying through the air that are not the exact same shape.
Right. Yeah, that would definitely create some issues downrange. And then leading forward now to the A-tip. So the A-tip was a huge step forward. What was the goal of going after that now? And I can't imagine, like we do machining and custom rifle builds, all that great stuff here, making that tip in the quantity that you're doing and just the amount of detail that would have to be to get that right consistently that many times on such a small little part. Well, what were you going for? I mean, it seemed like a big undertaking for such a small little part. And then what did you find once you started doing it?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a labor of love. There is no doubt there. The A-tip was something that we did, I'm going to say almost selfishly, for lack of a better term. And I mean that because, so our research and development team is really, really small, but our assistant director of engineering, who is kind of in charge of the ballistic side of the house, he's a passionate long range shooter. He started off in bench rest and then got bit by the PRS and that competition style and the NRL and the NRL hunter stuff. So he's into that game. Jaden Quinlan, who's our senior ballistician, and myself, we were, we started competing in the sniper matches and the PRS kind of stuff back in about 2013. And then we've got a host of engineers that also like to shoot stuff far away. So the goal for us was like, we need to make the ultimate bullet for us to shoot. We want to make the best bullet that's going to give us the edge. And so you learn some things as you make bullets over the course of 70 plus years. And so we know that we want a certain mass distribution. We want a lot of weight in the rear of the bullet, but we do want a really long bullet with the weight concentrated in the back portion, from a dynamic standpoint that helps things kind of balance out or quote unquote go to sleep soon. And that nose isn't spinning with a high degree of pitch and yaw. And so with aluminum, we were able to get a longer tip and hold rigidity, where with polymer, we just couldn't make a tip that long. So that allowed us to really stretch things out, kind of change that center of pressure, center of gravity relationship within the bullet. And so it really helps from that standpoint. And then, like I said, we make that long ogive. Now we're really stretching out boat tails. We're getting these really low drag bullets. And that tip is machined, that there is a lot of labor in that. That is a machine tip. That's not something that's molded like polymer. So there is a lot more to it. But the big deal was, how can we get tighter groups at long range? Because as long range shooters, like you had mentioned at the beginning here, we know that consistency is what helps you hit targets at long range. Consistent muzzle velocity and consistent drag characteristics. And from a consistency standpoint, there's nothing on the market more consistent than an A-tip from a drag consistency standpoint. And it's because of that tip, largely anyway. And the other factor was we wanted to be able to get a bullet packaged sequentially off the press where no human hands ever touch it. If you buy 500 bullets, you get bullets 1 through 500. And that was something from a manufacturing standpoint we thought would have some value as well. So the big one with the aluminum tip, though, was trying to get the ultimate in consistency and stability. And we really achieved that. It was a fun project to work on.
I think one of the coolest parts about Hornady, and I say this here at the Long Range Shooting School and when we do shows and stuff, a lot of the people in our industry don't shoot, and I know that's surprising to people that hear that, but a lot of people that make the widgets and make the parts and make the firearms, I mean, they're there for the job, but it's the people that are in it, that are passionate about it, that make the changes. Like they see the error, they see an area they can improve it, and like you said, it's almost selfishly you're doing it. But if it wasn't for you guys taking on the projects and saying we could do this a little bit better, and then investing in it, which is always a hard sell sometimes. It doesn't happen. People will stay in their comfort zone forever because they're just there for that job. So, I mean, kudos to you guys for taking it on. Was it something that came out quickly, or was it something that there was a push for a while, or was there other tips that you experimented with?
No, we kind of singled out aluminum pretty quickly just because of its properties and how easily it machines and the cost and what we could do with the size and everything. So it was pretty isolated that we were going to go with aluminum. And we'd played with it before. This is not, this has been many years ago. This has been played with before, but there just wasn't enough advances in being able to machine those tips in quantity and speed that would be useful to production.
Right.
And the market just didn't need them. We didn't know back then that some of the deficiencies of using, shooting a trajectory with a ballistic coefficient or some of the long range stuff at the time, the scopes and the barrels and the rifles, the quality of the powder. There's just a lot of stuff years ago that wasn't at the quality level that it is right now. And now, with rifles and barrels and optics and rangefinders, I mean, there's just so much that we didn't know back then that now we do and we're taking advantage of. So it was a good time to introduce the A-tip. The A-tip development process didn't take horribly long. And it was pretty quick to market once we got the okay that, yes, go ahead and start working on this project. And yes, we can package them sequentially off the press. We're going to figure that out. And it didn't take a ton of time to get them to market. And
the BCs are crazy compared to what you expected from bullets, 15, 20 years ago. This is a great time to get into long range shooting because, I mean, to get a rifle to perform at really long range consistently was almost magical 20, 25 years ago. The processes you had to go through and weeding through some of the misinformation that was out there.
Yeah, or the lack of information. I've told this story 100 times to anybody that'll listen, that when I grew up and shot quote unquote long range, there was 3 hay fields together. So it was a pretty big set of hay fields where I grew up, and I could stake a target in the ground and drive the truck into the hay field and then range the target. Well, the rangefinder would only range to 250 yards. So if you wanted to shoot 500, you had to put flag in the ground and then drive the truck out. And then the guns, the ammo, the bullets, I didn't have a scope with adjustable turrets. So I was picking places to hold in the reticle, and, documenting and writing all that down. And now, I mean, that was, I would have been 13, 14, 15 years old when I was doing a lot of that stuff. So we're going back into the early 2000s. Now you can go to any Sportsman's Warehouse, get a rifle with factory ammo, with a decent rangefinder and a decent scope. And people have done it all over, where you do 1,000 yards for $1,000. Yeah. And it can certainly be done with consistency now. And that's huge.
It's a good time to be in this industry and to be in the sport. I mean, there really is. There's just a lot of good stuff out there. When you get into, I'm going to ask you just a couple questions about the ATIP that we have been asked, and then I want to talk to you about the Ford-Off program. But
Sure.
One of the questions that we get asked, because we're using the 22 Creed for our trainers now. I mean, I absolutely love the cartridge. We used to use 223 shooting a 75 grain AMAX, then an ELD for trainers, just because we could keep the recoil down, run at a decent velocity, and they would reach to 1,000 yards all day, often beating the 308 in velocity and drop and drift. But the 22 Creed just takes it to a complete another level. And we get asked, like on the ATIPs, is it a hunting bullet? Could it be used for hunting bullet? Now, we used to use the AMAXs for deer. It would put a softball-sized hole into a deer for sure. But are you getting any questions on the ATIPs for hunting? And have you guys tested it much out?
Sure. So we definitely got that question, and we did test it early on. And actually, I got to do a lot of shooting with that bullet into gel. And what we found, and we kind of speculated this going in, but we shot the gel anyway, is that polymer tips work great for hunting bullets because that polymer compresses. So it will compress and drive rearward, and then that bullet upsets, virtually from the inside out almost, because it's getting that hydraulic force from the inside. Well, with the A-tip, we've captured these in gel, and what almost always happens is the tip hits the gel, breaks off, and you can find the whole tip with it, completely intact, and the bullet tumbles. So it kind of goes end over end. Sometimes it doesn't tumble, and sometimes it blows up. But the biggest thing is that it does not do the same thing every single time you shoot it. The only thing it does is break that tip off, which is not a consistent means for expansion. So, long answer, we certainly don't recommend it because it isn't controlled. The jacket is nice and thin to make it concentric. So there's nothing holding that bullet together. The tip does not initiate expansion, which we know from a hunting bullet standpoint, tip-initiated expansion is huge for consistency. So that's the long answer. Short answer, people are going to do what they're going to do. You can kill anything with anything. That's right. But it's certainly not something we recommend based on the testing that we've done. So
that is why the AMAX or ELD match did reasonably well on thin-skinned animals and why the A-tip probably might not.
Right. Yeah. And again, you can kill anything with anything, but it's just not going to be consistent. And, we did a ton of ballistic testing, terminal performance wise, with about every bullet design you can imagine. And that tip initiated expansion really aids in consistency. And so, we just don't recommend it for that reason.
Now, another thing that since, you've worked there for so long, one of the questions I did want to ask you, and I think could be really just important across the board, is ricochets, shooting off target or field shooting. We do a lot of varmint hunting here in Pennsylvania. A lot of times it's ridge to ridge. And here at the shooting school, we have a ban on, let's just say, you can't shoot solids here. Some bullets are known to bounce more than others. So like the 168 Federal Gold Medal match, there was a documented incident in Louisiana where it bounced 1.6 miles or something like that. So, and then no full metal jackets, no open tip mesh, stuff like that just have that tendency to when they hit the ground, they don't come apart and all of a sudden they go airborne. And you were in the military, so a lot of people are shocked when we tell them, hey, we tell them that even if you go to the range with full metal jacket ammo, and you're blazing away into a 100-yard bank, like half those rounds aren't staying in that bank. I mean, they're going airborne. And when we used to do night fire, it was amazing. Like it was almost like a fireworks show. Like you're shooting into a bank, and yet half the rounds are going straight up into the air. You can see it. So, what about bouncing and ricochets, and what can you give guys pointers with that? People assume that they can just shoot anything anywhere, but in the day and age where we live, where you might have residential areas within a mile or a half a mile behind your varminting field. So how do the A-tips, AMAXs, ELD matches, how do they perform? And do you have anything to add to stuff like that?
Well, I can't speak to it very specifically because that's not testing that we've done. So I can't speak to it from a scientific standpoint, but from an anecdotal standpoint, typically any match bullet that I'm aware of has cup and core, that has a lead core and is drawn out like we make our bullets. Those jackets are really thin. And the reason we make a thin jacket on a match bullet is it's easier to draw that jacket out perfectly circular. So we can keep concentricity really high. You have a concentric bullet, you have an accurate bullet. And so with the match bullets and varmint bullets, because they're so thin, it does not take much resistance to get that jacket to tear. It's spinning obviously radially, and it doesn't take a lot of contact with anything to get that jacket to yield and that bullet to blow up. So again, totally anecdotally, match bullets and varmint bullets being so thin-skinned, from a ricochet standpoint, again, you can't control all variables, but they do lend themselves to not taking a whole lot of upset in order to come apart.
Yeah, we've watched them. Every once in a while, you hear the noise, but if you watch through the spotting scope, you actually see it. Let's just say we're out varmint hunting, but you'll watch the impact, and then you'll see like 50 yards and 80 yards behind, just like a poof, poof, where it's coming apart and just basically scattering through the field. And even at our 1,000-yard target, we'll often go out and look, and you can see where there's nothing intact. And when the bullets hit, if they hit the dirt, we'll find some jackets with the cores completely separated and in pieces.
Yep.
And we sort of look for stuff like that. We're really careful on selecting even the bullets when we shoot long range, just because of that issue that can be had with certain bullets. And so at the range here, we're really picky. We've actually tell people if you show up with certain bullets, we will tell you just can't shoot. So I think you guys do a really nice job with that, and I think it's good information to put out there. On to the Ford-Off program. So
yeah,
if a lot of the podcasts and over the years past of teaching the shooting school, getting good dope for a rifle, and even back like when you were shooting in 2013s and growing, and it was a challenge. There's a lot of information, both good and bad, on the internet and the web, and getting your rifle really truly doped out. And you've got all the weather variables and aerodynamic jump and all these other things that you guys talk about. Way to go, because we've been playing with the Ford-Off program and actually teaching it to school this year. And it is just stunning to watch from where it started from how many years ago to where it is now. Is an absolutely incredible tool. So can you talk about the development of it and where you're at with it and where it's sort of going from here and all the things that you've learned with it?
Yeah. Basically, when they were doing the ELDX, ELD match development, when they were really using the Doppler radar and some of the programs associated with that, they found, I say they, talking Dave Emery and Jaden Quinlan, the two guys that were heading up ballistics then, that, wow, there's this, trajectory solution that uses the actual bullet that we're shooting. We designed the bullet in this software, and we can get trajectory from this bullet and know where that bullet's going to go, because a BC calculator doesn't take into account that the bullet is spinning and flying with a right twist barrel, a nose right and up orientation, and that it has a certain degree of pitch and yaw at the nose, that angle of attack, the difference between the trajectory vector and where your nose is pointed. There's an angle there, and that needs to be accounted for, because again, the bullet is spinning in an environment, and the BC side of things just doesn't account for that. So it was kind of used internally for a while, and then it was like, hey, why don't we get all of our bullets and some applicable match bullets from other companies, and we could put something on our website where you could have a legitimate, no questions asked trajectory solution on the internet, right on our website. And so that's kind of what they did. And it did not take long after that to go, this is cool, but it needs to be in your hand. And so the natural progression from that was to develop an app, and to put it on your cell phone, or, a lot of guys will buy like an Apple, iPod, and you can take that into the backcountry then, and you can put a book on it, you put some music on it, you can have your Ford-Off on there, and they're rugged. You can put them in an OtterBox, and you have the ultimate in trajectory solutions right there. And obviously you can download it on your phone too. I mean, it's super handy. It's free of charge. So the progression really was using it internally just for us to use as we're doing our testing to, well, let's make this official and put it on our website, publish a white paper about it of what what the benefits of using drag coefficients are instead of a ballistic coefficient. And then the natural progression from that was, we have to have this information in your hand. So went to the cell phone app. We also hooked up with Kestrel, simply because Kestrel's kind of been the gold standard, because you get incredibly accurate atmospherics. You put the Ford-off engine in one of those. And then, moving forward, we're continuing to update. We're continuing to add bullets from us and obviously other manufacturers, applicable bullets, that is, because one of the catch-22s is, if the tip does deform in flight, then you can't add it to Ford-off, because the drag is not the same from bullet to bullet. So, we got Hornady, Berger, Sierra, Warner, Tool, Vapor Trail. I think there's some Nosler bullets in there. Just any bullet that's applicable to long range shooting that is being added. If we're going to continue to work on that, we're changing some features up here and there as we get feedback from customers and from internal use.
Well, it was really cool. We used to use the online program, and we've had all of them through the years. We've tried everything that's out there. And at the shooting school, we would basically make the students make a click chart from scratch, and we would actually just have them go to your website right here in the classroom, and we would actually put in all the information. This is back before Ford-off. And, we would teach them how to fix it and correct it and really map out their rifle, because there's always variances in barrels and what they do. And now the Ford-off is out, and the last couple of years watching it evolve, this year's actually been stunning. Like, one of the couple tools that are on there that are absolutely amazing on how accurate it is when you do your zero angle.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's been a hard concept, and we haven't really tried to propagate that to every single person who's a shooter, because a lot of people are resistant to change, but that is something that will absolutely change your life as a long range shooter. And I guarantee you will have you hitting on the first round from a cold gun. You show up at a location and start shooting more often than not.
Stunning. Like we're really slow to put stuff out to students. Like, I'll try something and I'll keep using it and shooting it and making sure that, we're putting out good information and it's something that's going to use. And hey, we don't want to embarrass ourselves, right? So when this zero angle come out, I have to be honest with you, and we took several rifles out, brand new rifles with no dope on them. So we'd either use our school ammo or, box ammo, whatever. I would take it to the range. I would do a rough zero. I mean, literally, I would use the zero angle, which is incredibly smart. Like, it's actually doing the exact distance of your target. It's taking into account, as simple and stupid as this may sound, it's 2 degrees or 3 degrees of an angle up or downhill. And then it's allowing you to do a quick zero. Let's just say, for example, and I've tested this, I can say it's 3 inches low and to the left. I put that in, I calculated out, and literally ran steel out to 700 yards, first round impacts. Like, I would have not believed it worked. And I'm thinking, as a hunter, you go out on a hunt of a lifetime, they always make you zero your gun. And all of a sudden you watch people in panic mode because they go to zero their rifle and they're half an inch low and left. And even though they're not that far off, they start chasing their perfect zero. And then panic sets in. And then they're throwing shots all over the place just because their head's not there, right? And how simple, I'm a half inch low, a quarter inch left. You do the zero angle, and it's calculating that into your zero. No stress involved, and you're off to the races. Genius that it actually works. And when I was playing with it, I was like, okay, we're going to test this a couple of times before I start talking about this in class, right? Because we demo it in the class, and I'm going to look like an idiot if it doesn't work. And I was like, wow, that is really a cool tool. How long is that? I mean, we started playing with it this year, but how long has it been out and in development?
Well, it's been out for a couple of years, although we initially didn't really push on it that hard. It was just kind of a feature that kind of ran in the background. And then, the thought was like, you know what, we should make this a little bit more publicly known. We should, I'm going to say, push on this a little bit to help people understand what it is, and to make a splash, because it is better. It's simply better. I can't think of a better term for it than that. It increases your propensity to hit the target. And that's always what we're after.
It is. And it's some of the smaller details that you don't think plays a huge impact at long range. But if you have these small errors at the short range when you're zeroing, collectively it starts to make a big difference. And
yeah, it really does.
I think what people too, probably don't understand is like, and maybe some of them do, but 20 years ago, you had to buy a lot of these programs. So like Patagonia, I remember, was like $200 or $300 to purchase. I'm not sure if that was in the 90s or early 2000s, but you guys don't sell the program, and you do it for other bullets as well. Not just, you didn't say, well, we're going to do it to our customers, and if you shoot somebody else's bullets, you're SOL. But you're offering this for free.
Yeah, we really are. There are a couple of 99-cent purchases in there, like the range card and what we call the multi-HUD, which allows you to set up multiple shooting solution screens. So if you have, if you're sitting over an area on a hunt and you've got 4 different areas where an animal is likely to come out and they're at different angles and it changes the wind and stuff, you can pre-populate those. But the hefty majority of the program, 99% of the program, is absolutely free of charge. The zero angle technology, which I'm going to say technology, is it's math. It's not necessarily technology. It just, I guess, to give a brief overview for the listeners that aren't super aware of what we mean by zero angle, the angular relationship between the bullet's vector or the flight path at muzzle exit and your line of sight through your optic, that angular relationship does not change ever, right? Unless you take the scope off or something. So that angular relationship is the same, whether or not it's the wind's blowing from left or right or towards you or behind you at whatever miles an hour or what temperature. And those environmental factors change your zero range, because range is an arbitrary number that is only true because of this angle, the angular relationship, again, between the bullet vector and the optic line of sight, and this external environment. So it's only good once, right? And so you think you got 100-yard zero, but it's probably 99 or 103 or 102 or 97, and that tiny difference, like you said, makes a huge difference when you get long range, and it makes a huge difference for first round impacts. When you drive for 6 hours into another state, you just gain 4,000 feet of elevation. You can lay down and expect a first round impact using zero angle. But if you showed up with a zero range, your dope is going to be wrong, because your range, again, is an arbitrary number that you just changed.
That's right. And I can tell you that I've won and placed in a lot of matches beating competitors who were better shooters than me simply because they didn't have their dope dialed in, or their dope was off. A couple shots, that's all it takes, and you're out.
Yeah.
What's new coming down the pipe from Hornady? What do you guys got in the plans? Anything new with the forward off? Anything new with bullets? What all do you guys have coming out in 2022 that you're excited about?
Sure. Well, we can't talk a ton about what's coming out in 2023 or some of the new products, but for 2022, we did launch a new bullet called the CX bullet. It's a hunting bullet. We did some features to lower the drag. That bullet's now featured in our forward-off engine, the monolithic bullet for hunting. And we just tried to extend the range that bullet was usable. And so we've got the CX bullet new for 2022. But really, the answer is we are making bullets and ammo, and we are shipping faster than we ever have before by orders of magnitude, and it's still not enough to even keep up with back orders a little bit. So new product development is still going on. New product releases are just a little bit slower than what you might normally see from Hornady, because we're trying to dedicate so many of our resources to manufacturing what's back ordered, because it's a big back order.
Yeah. What do you think? Not to go into, because everybody knows the amount of new shooters, and then you also have the people that are buying and reselling, sort of taking advantage of fellow shooters and gouging them. But what do you see as far as like your fingerprint, or really from the view that you guys are at? Is it coming back around, or do you think there's going to be some more shortage issues with materials and supplies that are going to further, not to make people panic, but still going to slow down the catch up, because we're still in the catch up phase.
Oh, we're very much in the catch up phase, and we're trying hard. Like I said, we've added space, we've added machines, we've added employees, and we've done a lot of engineering control changes to improve the efficiency of a process. 0.5%, 1% of efficiency increase. And when you stretch that up over however many machines in 24 hours a day of manufacturing, like those small changes add up. So again, we are absolutely making ammo and product faster than we ever have before. And we're shipping way more than we ever have before, which is, the big picture is trying to get it out the door to the consumer.
Right.
The crystal ball is obviously pretty hazy, because you just don't know what the market's going to do. Politically, there could be some things that happen that certainly do make it worse, and we're hoping that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's great to have orders coming in that, just through the roof, but that's not a sustainable way to run a business or grow a business. So that's not something we're super interested in. But hopefully, things start to slow down, and this is going to be hard to explain, and I'll try to put this diplomatically, but it's not so much of a ammo and bullet shortage as much as it is an ammo and bullet buying surplus, if that makes sense. Because never in the history of ever has there been this much ammo and bullets produced in this country, but it's harder to find than it ever has been. So, production rates are record breaking, and I don't know how to put that other than, it's just getting bought much faster than it could be sold. And we're really not hamstringed by raw material. If we could get more copper and or lead, it really wouldn't impact how much we could get out the door. That's limited by, there's only 24 hours in a day. We only have so many machines, and that's unfortunately the hang up. That's the reality. So hopefully in the next, 18 months or so, things kind of float back to normal and we can get back to some sort of normalcy. We're ready for it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. And then I just have another quick question for you on that subject. Well, we learned our lesson was, we've had a couple issues over the years past where things got short, and we teach a long range shooting school. We go through a lot of components because we supply rifles and ammunition. We know now that we're probably going to plan 2 years out to make sure that we have enough to sustain us, not just this year, but for the next year. So we don't get caught with our business in trouble and not able to make the components that we need. So I absolutely agree. I think people are going to buy more than what they need just simply because they don't want to get stuck in this situation again. But do you think the resellers, and I don't want to throw like gun broker and stuff under the bus here, but we've seen this before when we've had the shortages prior, is that people go out and keep the shortage longer by buying up what they can, only to turn it around and flip it at 2 or 3 times its value at the gun shows and on Gun Broker. And like, I had a good friend of mine that's an instructor here that was out of Vargat, and he was like, I'm going to just buy an 8-pound keg on Gun Broker for $800 or $900, whatever the outrageous price was. And I told him I'd flog him with a rubber hose. I will give him the 8 pounds, because if he buys that 8 pounds off this person that's selling it, it encourages them to go out and buy more of it up and keep the shortage going.
Propagates. Yeah.
Do you think that's part of the problem?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. People are only going to buy what they're willing to buy. And, we talked earlier about having a area where there's an ammo and bullet and powder shortage. Well, yeah, that's true, but there's also some on the market if you're willing to pay for it. And I agree. I think that by continuing to pay those absolutely outrageous prices, it's only going to make things worse in the long run.
Yeah, you're teaching them basically to rush out the next time they can buy a 4 8-pound kegs and buy it again, because they're going to double or triple their money on somebody, taking it away from people who actually needed it or would have bought it otherwise at the normal price. So
yeah, exactly.
Hopefully that goes away soon. But anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. I know we were going to try to keep this around 30 minutes or well over our time, but awesome bullets.
No problem.
I can't wait to meet you and do some shooting with you at some of the matches. And then I do want to say thank you again for all the work on the Ford Off. I mean, what a great tool you guys have come up with. And you invested all the money from you guys on your end to basically put it out there for a lot of people to use, and a lot of people to use at no charge. So on behalf of all the shooters out there, I do want to say thank you for that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're going to continue to innovate. We're going to continue to do R&D, although, like I mentioned, the R&D is not quite as frequent as far as new product releases go. But I'll tell you what, we're trying to get stuff designed. And then on the manufacturing side, to say the least, we are running balls to the wall. No questions asked.
Well, Seth, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. We really appreciate it. And then hopefully we'll get you back here sometime soon as new products come out for 2023.
That sounds great. Thanks again.
Thanks, Seth. All right. What a great interview. Thank you again, Seth, for taking the time to come on the podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation, and looking forward to seeing you out and about in 2022 somewhere at a match. Before we continue on with the podcast, I do want to say a quick thanks to TriggerTech. TriggerTech is also a proud sponsor of the podcast and maker of world-class triggers. So if you're in the market for a fantastic trigger or need to upgrade your current rifle, we really encourage you to stop over to triggertech.com. That's triggertech.com. All right, so if you want more information on Hornady's line of bullets, you can stop over to Hornady.com, and you can also look them up online. They have their ballistics calculator on their website, and I really, really encourage you to take a look at the Forward Off program that you can download on your phone. I will tell you that through the testing for this year that we've done with it, and this isn't a paid advertisement, is we've used it religiously through the school for the last couple of years. This last year just ran phenomenally well. I mean, just really impressive as a tool as it is. And, I always say take a hard copy of your dope with you, so have a written copy of your dope or printed copy of your dope. That way you always have something to fall back on if your phone gets broken, if your battery dies, gets lost, gets stolen, whatever. But boy, what a great tool. It really is something to see, and especially with the new zero angle, if you go in and you read the instructions properly and you set it up and do the proper procedure to get it working and find that perfect zero angle, great tool, fantastic tool. So way to go, Hornady. So thank you so much, Seth, for taking the time to come on. All right, just a couple quick updates. We do have some long-range shooting school dates slots still available for spring. We have a couple left for the spring, and we have a couple left for fall. They are almost full. We only allow 5 students per class. If you want to learn more about the Hornady program, you like to come in and learn how to run it, that's a great opportunity. We also have our reloading classes going on. We have one that's coming up here in about 2 weeks, and we just announced one for March, and we'll be announcing one for April as well. Those classes are limited to 4 students, in which we're going to make ammunition, and we're actually going to take you out, test it, shoot it, and really try to get you set up, because we're finding that a lot of guys nowadays, or a lot of shooters, really, if they're going to do a lot of shooting and they want to enjoy the sport, they're going to pretty much have to learn how to reload, or they're going to spend a fortune trying to purchase the ammo, or really struggle just trying to find it loaded at all. So a lot of our customers from even 20 years ago, who we never thought would be interested in reloading, are starting to reload now, setting up kits at home, and really starting to learn how to manufacture their own ammunition to go out and enjoy their sport, which is really awesome. You'll save a fair amount of money, and you'll make fantastic ammunition. So you can stop over to our website and take and see more of that. We also had changed up one of our advanced classes to a field shooting class. So you'll see that in June, we opened up a field shooting class. It's going to be limited to 8 shooters. It's in Seneca Rocks, West Virginia. And it's really what I would consider like a hunting style field shooting class, where a lot of the shots are going to be traditional type distances that you would find in most big game or sheep or elk hunting scenarios, and then really tool you up on how to use your equipment, what equipment to think about, how to properly shoot a sling. I mean, there's lots of little things that just get the most out of your equipment in those field craft shooting positions. And so that'll be a 2-day event. We're going to hold that in June, and that is open for registration now. And then, of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We are taking a collection of questions. We're going to be doing a Q&A soon, and we're starting to collect up a fair amount of questions now. If we read your question on the air and answer it, of course, we'll give you a free t-shirt and hat as our way of saying thank you. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you are listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.